Mr. Speaker, I rise today to remind you and my colleagues that Congress appropriated billions for disaster relief for Hurricanes Irma and Maria. In the latest effort, however, to find funding to build wall, the White House and top budget officials continue to discuss shifting to disaster funding to pay for a wall that a foreign nation was to pay for and now must be borne by people still recovering from disaster. The 2017 hurricane season was one of the worst on records. Among the hardest places hit were Puerto Rico and my home, the Virgin Islands of the United States, which not only lost power across the islands, but many vital pieces of infrastructure which were heavily damaged, destroyed, and most tragically, lives were lost. This disaster significantly impacted the Virgin Islands, destroying the island's infrastructure, loss of our only 2 hospitals, multiple schools, thousands of homes, and left residents without electricity for a period of 9 months. The total damage to the Virgin Islands is estimated at $10.8 billion. $10.8 billion in a place that only has a $1 billion budget. $6.9 billion for infrastructure, $2.3 billion for housing, $1.5 million to the economy. Diverting disaster funds from this community would create a security risk and make them even more vulnerable. Mr. Speaker, shifting disaster relief funds appropriated by this body for my district and others impaired by the 2017-2018 natural disasters would create a catastrophic economic disaster. Disaster funding from the Army Corps was critical to disaster recovery, including power restoration, studies, repairs, construction projects in the Virgin Islands and other territories, and states impacted by the natural disasters. The Army Corps of Engineers, however, has barged more than 25,000 cubic yards of construction and demolition debris from the territory. However, approximately more than 6,000, almost 7,000 cubic yards remain on the island, still to be removed. There is still so much work left undone. Individuals are still without roofs. After extensive debate, discussion with FEMA, the roof repair program is just now, a year and a half later, repairing the thousands of roofs and homes destroyed. The STEP roof program has been extended to March 1st. The STEP program debris removal is still in progress throughout the territory. The hurricanes left not 1, but 2 hospitals overwhelmed with debris and destroyed, our only 2 hospitals. And now, worksheets still have not been approved by FEMA for the rebuilding of those hospitals. The modular hospital is still not in place. Students have only recently, in this month, moved into the modular classrooms. Can you imagine? School reconstruction has not begun. Our communities still have a long way to go to get in the disaster recovery and rebuilding progress. Mr. Speaker, nowhere else in this country would this be allowed. This would not be allowed in any colleagues of your homes. However, before and after the storm, Virgin Islanders put their heads down and did the work. They pitched in and helped one another because that's all we had at that time, and the benevolence of other people, until you, Congress, until you, colleagues, gave them the disaster funding that was needed to rebuild. Mr. Speaker, my colleagues, unlike other places, the Virgin Islands doesn't have 5 or 6 members of the House or millions of constituents living in your own districts. The Virgin Islands didn't have thousands of people on the news media or chefs or playwrights bringing musicals to our island to draw attention to the devastation in our home. The Virgin Islands have me, and I pray they have you. They have you, Mr. Speaker. They have you, colleagues, to continue the fight for them, for these Americans, to tell the White House that they should not shift disaster funding to build a wall away from Americans living in territories for something that a foreign country was to pay for in the beginning. I yield back.